was a touch careless around his ball, but I don't think he did anything intentionally. We've seen...
A man in a gallery at Royal Birkdale was standing directly over Scottie Scheffler's golf ball, pointing at it, ready to help. Scheffler moved up the hill and told him to walk away. "Guys, get out of there. Stop. Do not find the ball." The world #1 golfer had just spent a shot trying to save his Open championship, and now he was ordering people not to find the evidence of it. To understand why the best player in the world would refuse help locating his own ball, you have to go back to where the tournament stood on Sunday afternoon at the 154th Open Championship. Scottie Scheffler arrived at Royal Birkdale defending the title he won in 2025. He began the final round 6 shots behind the leaders, and he cut that deficit in half almost immediately, making 3 birdies in his opening 5 holes. By the time he reached the closing stretch, the mathematics were brutally simple. Cameron Young had posted a clubhouse total of 9 under par. Scheffler needed birdie and birdie across the 17th and 18th holes to tie him. Then came the 17th. His drive found thick fescue just short of a fairway bunker, and the frustration on the tee was visible to everyone watching. What he faced next was one of the least appealing shots in championship golf, a blind approach from an uphill lie at the bottom of one of Royal Birkdale's dunes. Standing over that ball with the green invisible from where he stood, Scottie Scheffler reached for a 3-wood. That decision is the moral center of this entire controversy, so hold on to it. He was not laying up. He was not playing safe. He was attempting a hero shot from a lie that did not permit one. The ball skipped off the grass in front of him and flew hard left. It traveled roughly 100 yards away from his intended target, sailing over and behind the grandstand and coming to rest inside a gated hospitality zone left of the 17th green. Scheffler described it plainly to Kara Banks of the National Broadcasting Company. "The ball skipped off the grass in front of me and it flew over the grandstand there, but fortunately it was in the TO, so I was able to get relief." He played a provisional ball, and that one went left as well. Here is the point worth sitting with. On any ordinary weekday at Royal Birkdale with no championship infrastructure on the property, that golf ball is lost. The penalty is stroke and distance. The player walks back, plays again, and almost certainly writes down a large number. That is the outcome the golf course itself is designed to produce for a shot that poor. That is not what happened. The reason is a category in the rules of golf called a temporary immovable obstruction. These are the structures that exist only because a championship is being staged, including grandstands, hospitality tents, television towers, and scoreboards. Under normal circumstances, if one of these structures interferes with a player's stance, swing, or line of sight to the target, the player receives free relief. The player finds the nearest point where both the physical interference and the line of sight interference disappear, no closer to the hole, and is then permitted 2 club lengths from that point. That is the version of the rule most golf fans already know. It is the subsection underneath it that caused the argument. Gabby Herzig, reporting from Southport for The Athletic, identified the specific provision in play. It is listed as Model Local Rule F23. Under this provision, if a player's ball is known or virtually certain to have come to rest inside the area of a temporary immovable obstruction, the player does not need to find the ball at all. Relief is taken using the estimated point where the ball last crossed the edge of that obstruction. Read that again. The ball does not need to be found. Before anyone concludes that Scottie Scheffler manufactured this, the standard involved is a genuine evidentiary bar, and it was met. A rules official watched the ball's flight, and Scheffler's caddy, Ted Scott, had tracked exactly where it was coming down. Scheffler explained the sequence afterwards. The rules official said it landed just barely left of the grandstand thing. I don't know what you call that, like a sponsor area or something? And Teddy had a beat right on where it was coming down. Once they arrived, the position was past the fence marking the boundary of the obstruction, and anything inside that fence qualified. Now comes the detail that most coverage of this incident skipped entirely, and it is the most revealing part of the whole episode. Scottie Scheffler actually asked the official whether finding the ball would help him. because the ball itself was sitting roughly 50 yards closer to the hole than his point of entry. The answer was not simple. He said, yes, you can then use that spot, but you might have to go to the other side of the TO, which I didn't know exactly where that would be, and that's not a great angle coming across there. So the choice was this. Option 1, find the ball, gain 50 yards, and risk being sent to the far side of the hospitality structure with an awkward angle across the putting surface. Option 2, abandon the search entirely, walk backwards, and take point of entry relief with a clean look at the green. The option that sounds worse was the better one. That is why he stopped the search. So decided to stop the search and go back and drop it doing point of entry TIO relief. Actually, I did that once this year during the Byron as well. Not something I'm proud of, but I was familiar with. That single admission carried enormous weight. Scheffler had used the same relief earlier in the same season at the CJ Cup at the Byron Nelson. He described it as something he was not proud of. And he knew the procedure well enough to make a strategic decision in real time. He also named the people he waved off. Fortunately, it was my security guy that I've had for a few years here. His name is Brucey. And then Woody was up there as well. So both those guys are I know them quite well, so when I said, please don't look for the ball, they got out of there. The on-course commentator from the national broadcasting company, John Wood, was also searching, and Scheffler called out to him to stop. Wood later told The Athletic that the ball was found in that area eventually. A referee then walked Scottie Scheffler through the drop. He hit a wedge to somewhere between 10 and 11 feet, holed the putt, and made birdie on the par 5. He moved to 8 under par, one shot behind Cameron Young with one hole to play. The reaction was immediate and loud. Ryan Lavner, speaking on the Golf Channel podcast alongside Rex Hoggard, delivered the sharpest version of the criticism. We have to go back to 17 because this was ridiculous. He hits a blind shot and hits it way left. He went on to frame the central question that dominated the week. How, in 2026, can you not find a golf ball and yet receive free relief and have a great look at the green and end up making birdie? Lavner extended the argument to the championship level of the sport, saying that relief from these structures needs to be examined because it makes no sense that the presence of an area surrounding a hospitality tent removes the requirement to find a ball after a severely errant shot. He was also careful to separate the player from the rule. It was not necessarily that Scottie was using the rule to his advantage. I'm just saying the rule is absolutely outrageous to have free relief even if you don't find your golf ball. Underneath that critique sit 3 separate arguments. The first is fairness. The grandstands and hospitality tents are not present at Royal Birkdale during a normal week. A club member who hits that exact shot loses the ball and pays the full penalty. The professional during championship week does not. The structures that exist because of the tournament make the tournament easier to survive. The second is architecture. Relief zones change how a hole is meant to be played, overriding decisions the course designer made deliberately. The third argument is the one with the longest history, and it has a name. It is called backboarding. Players have been accused of intentionally firing shots beyond grains and into grandstands, guaranteeing themselves free relief and a drop from a lie of their choosing. A frequently cited example is the 6th hole at Pebble Beach, where players sometimes aim drives toward the cart path on top of the left hill rather than the fairway, specifically to secure a better angle into the green. This is also not the first time the virtual certainty exception has decided a significant moment. At the 2024 Sony Open, tournament leader Carl Yuan hit his ball into a grandstand on the 18th hole at YLA Country Club. The ball was never recovered. Yuan was permitted a free drop under the same exception, and he finished tied for 4th. On the golf discussion forums, the most upvoted framing of the argument made an important distinction. The complaint was not that fans misunderstood the rule. The complaint was that the rule is written in a way that removes any punishment for a genuinely poor shot, which in turn removes the reward for hitting a good one. There is, however, a serious case in defense of the rule, and it deserves to be heard properly. The grandstand is the championship's responsibility, not the players. The hospitality structure, the fencing, the crowd, and the sponsor area were all installed by the tournament. Without them, the ball may well have been findable and playable. Penalizing a competitor for infrastructure that the championship itself erected on the golf course is its own form of unfairness. The practical alternative is also worse than it sounds. Requiring the ball to be found before granting relief would produce chaotic searches through packed spectator areas, hospitality suites, and crowds of people. It would create constant disputes about whether a spectator moved a ball, kicked it, or pocketed it. The rule as written removes an entire category of argument, and every critic, including Ryan Lavner, conceded the same point. Scottie Scheffler did not manipulate anything. He hit a poor shot and applied a rule that already existed and that he already knew. The honest counter to that defense is equally simple. Intent has no bearing on whether a rule is well designed. A rule that produces a strange outcome when nobody is trying to exploit it will produce a worse outcome when somebody is. All of this happened in the same week as the other rules story at Royal Birkdale, and the two together explain why golf spent the entire championship arguing with itself. Bryson DeChambeau was assessed a 2-stroke penalty after Friday's second round. Officials from the Royal and Ancient ruled that he had improved the area of his intended swing while walking through knee-high rough behind his ball on the 5th hole. The organization emphasized that his actions were accidental and stated that the rule applied regardless. The chief executive of the Royal and Ancient, Mark Darbon, described the 2-shot penalty as a clear-cut decision from a rules perspective. The consequences were immediate. Bryson DeChambeau believed a round of 66 had left him 1 shot off the lead at the halfway point. Instead, following rounds of 69 and 72 across the weekend, he finished 6 shots behind the eventual champion. He declined to speak to the media all week, including after Sunday's final round. Rory McIlroy was blunt about it. He admitted he is not fond of Bryson DeChambeau, said there was no doubt the line of the backswing had been improved, and accused his rival of holding the Open Championship hostage. Scottie Scheffler had been asked about the penalty on Saturday and said he had a great deal to say, but that it was not the right moment while he was still chasing the claret jug. On Sunday evening, with his title defense over, he answered. He defended Bryson DeChambeau directly. All I'll say is, Bryson, I've known him for a long time, and he's a lot of things, but he's definitely not a cheater. He added that he had never seen him cheat once, going back through putting contests, chipping contests, and their days playing amateur golf together. He conceded imperfection without conceding intent. When you're watching him there from that camera angle, maybe he was a touch careless around his ball, but I don't think he did anything intentionally. He argued that distant camera angles distort what actually happened, and that certain players attract more scrutiny simply because every shot they hit is broadcast. He then pointed to precedent, referencing the ruling involving Jon Rahm at the Memorial Tournament when his ball moved in the rough, and questioning whether the naked eye could ever detect such a thing. Finally came the philosophical argument. Growing up, Scheffler said, players tried to stay far away from the line separating legal from illegal. Now, he believes some players push closer to it than they should. His conclusion was direct. I think we need to kind of get back to the traditions of the game, and maybe we do need to police things a little bit more stricter in the game. That is the contradiction at the heart of the week. Golf penalized one man 2 strokes for footprints he did not intend to leave, and granted another man free relief for a ball nobody officially recovered during play. Both decisions were correct under the rules as written. That is precisely the problem. As for the championship itself, Scottie Scheffler bogeyed the 18th hole and finished at 7 under par in a tie for 4th. Ryan Fox birdied the 72nd hole to win the 154th Open Championship at 10 under par, edging Cameron Young by a single shot. The ruling on the 17th hole never decided the outcome, which is exactly why this is the safest possible moment to examine it. Several fixes have been proposed. Require the ball to be found before point of entry relief is granted, and otherwise apply stroke and distance. Treat the far side of a temporary immovable obstruction as a penalty area with lateral relief for 1 stroke. Define reference point drop zones in advance for holes surrounded by grandstands. or leave Model Local Rule F23 exactly as it is, on the grounds that the structure is the championship's creation and not the player's mistake.